Gonna take a quick look at our pre-market insight. Alright, so on the calendar, what's today, Tuesday? We only have the ISM non-manufacturing PMI at 10, so nothing major on the calendar. Just gonna take a quick look at the power range. The key things that stick out from this is we had a lot of volume. So already by 8 a.m. we had 109K of volume with an ATR of 168.38. And looking for a pullback, keeping in mind the high of 14,713.25. Just take a quick look at what we did overnight. See, we're really extended on this daily, so I am expecting some sort of a pullback. Of course, I don't know when, but some sort of a pullback. And at the open of course, yesterday we traded in a tight range, but had some pullback into that support that was created yesterday, previous resistance, and now we popped long in the starting in the European session, going through into today's pre-market. So it's bullish for right now, but we'll see how it opens. I'm just gonna look through my charts. I'm not gonna really speak on anything unless I see something that sticks out. One interesting thing I did see, just looking at the pulse of the market, with the exception of NQ, of course, and I think it was CL, was it GC? Yeah, with the exception of NQ and GC, everything else is short of my of the power range. So we got a lot of selling in the market, with the exception of those two.
liquidity that's coming into the buy side. I don't expect them to hold 45, but it'd be interesting if they hold it. It'd give us more insight into the dynamics as we get into the open and price moves forward. So a huge amount of volume just came in. 1,300 contracts traded since 8/21. 400, 450 and buying delta being accumulated within that time window. So that just printed. We got a huge increase in participation to the buy side on both markets. Our offer has moved to 48 now. And they're being more aggressive. So they're throwing supply into the market. We're seeing the delta flip. 300 contracts have just traded in the last minute, and most of it is now to the sell side. So we're seeing how our buyer's going to respond. The node down below this is 45, where our offer was previously. That'd be a great test to see how our buyer responds to that if the selling continues to accumulate. It's aggressive, but not really. I still call this creepy volume. On the institution side, they're just buying passively, as most of the flow is happening on M&Q. Our seller at 48 is continuing to sell into this, and we're just watching as our buyers reacting to the selling, and they're kind of passively absorbing it as the seller is accumulating. We're getting closer to the node 45. And I will say that this is kind of a predatory setup, how the charts are printed. Everything has already been printed for a seller to just come in and eat a little bit of liquidity from a market maker standpoint, get a nice trade on this move before we rotate to the next. And in between me saying that, the 45, our buyer was tested at 45, they're defending it. And since we had that touch of 45, it was a slight dip. We saw 44 3/4. They've only just absorbed all of the offers that have been coming in. As the offers accumulating, they're still holding price above that. So really, we're just, from my perspective, we're watching our buyer passively hold price here and allow us to see what the selling is doing and how aggressive it is. So that just printed. Our seller defended 48. Our buyer's at 45, so we're in a tight range.
That is a well-known bullish setup. Those last two candlestick pair on the 3-minute, which is like the low of that is being taken out.
So we're starting to see the offers accumulate, supply come in on both sides of the market. We're splashing below this area 45 where our buyer was previously absorbing. They kind of got out of it. Huge punch of liquidity coming through as our offer gets aggressive. Now we're testing the node below that, which is 41. Point of control below that is 40. Our buyers stepped in at 41.5. They're moved up to 42. Now we've got the battle going on. So volume's starting to come in now. Still a little bit creepy though.
If we look at on the candlesticks, if we do look left in history, we can see they're continuing the same pattern. They're keeping the pattern consistent so far. Still got about a minute before the bell.
And interestingly enough, so I mentioned it, I'd say a few minutes ago, 3 minutes max, how this was a print for a predatory move. We're seeing that happen now, where I was mentioning that it was just there. The opportunity was there to grab a little bit of liquidity before we see the next move. So it looks like that has happened. And there's the next thing I'm watching is the response to this and how low it's going to go, because we're seeing point of control being defended right now. So if our sellers want to push price down, they're going to have to come with supply, because our buyer is here creepily seeing what our seller has to offer. And I refer to buyer as the buyer and seller as the seller, because there's going to be people, participants on both sides of the market who have the flow, and they're there. They've got the algorithms moving price at quick nanoseconds. But there's the participant, the buyer and the seller behind all that. Most of the time they're the same being from my perspective. So offers coming in.
There's the open.
Really creepy, super creepy. They're on the sidelines still, trying to see. There hasn't been the decision made. But keep in mind too, we're at all-time highs. A lot of opportunity to move price around. So now the buying's coming in, but it's not. It's really creepy with it. We're starting to see where the offer is they're still defending the 48 really passively. I would say we still haven't seen the real flow come in yet. Now buying is starting to come in as price is pushing higher. I think a lot of that would be any shorts there. Stops are being triggered. Now we're starting to see volume come in, both sides of the market. We've got support. People are positioning into this long. Now we're ready to go. So we'll just see the flow as it continues, and they're buying. Buying's still continuing. Don't see a seller yet. I'd say this retrace, right when I say that retrace, I'd say our buyers pulled just because we hadn't seen a seller. We found the seller at 57.5. They've moved up to 60.75. So what are we going to do? Flow is still creepy.
And this is setting up to be still early, but it's setting up to be a momentum play off this 3-minute candle. But I would still be cautious because we're in all-time highs, and like the buyers that are moving this are actually will more than likely be looking to getting in and getting out quickly.
Yes, and we're seeing that with the flow, because there's not. So we did see an aggressive print, right? And we saw a lot of orders come in. It's very creepy. They're being sophisticated. It's a very intelligent movement that we're seeing now, given the position that we're in. And as price is moving higher, it's attracting more participation and coming to the buy side.
Yep.
The seller at 60.75 is still at 60.75. And as price is moving higher, it's just, again, it's hard to put into words. You've got, especially since it's happening so quickly. So our seller, I would say what we're seeing here is all buyer movement. So they're pulling. And all of the delta that's been coming into the buy side is leaving. It's very creepy movement that we're watching. So we saw a delta of about 1,000 contracts on the MNQ on the retail side come in. So much of that is gone. A third of that is gone. So that's printed now. Now that we've got the print, we can really move. They were more aggressive on the buying on the institution side. Offer sitting at 69.25. this is where we're going to see if our buyer's going to commit to it and we're going to move with this momentum higher. This is the opportunity. But just looking at the flow again, it's more intelligent.
Even with all of
Off,
that buying that came in, I'm not seeing a good uh, indication of continuation on looking at the delta. Like right now, in my 30-minute is below 100. It's bouncing between like 90s, whatever, and 200.
mhm.
Like I would expect more with
Me
that kind of
too.
momentum.
Yeah, it's the word I use is creepy. I
Mm-hmm.
forget. It's just you want to be cautious, and with us having a 3-day weekend, uh, market makers having a 3-day weekend, and I also suspect a lot of evolution happens on these 3-day weekends with what we come into. I may not have said that good, but what we're now testing, regardless of all that, we're testing our buyer at 62, offers at 68, and again we're seeing this kind of creepy volumes tremendously declined. Momentum has gone since that open 3-minute print. We saw about 11,119 contracts print, which is, I would say, pretty low.
Yeah.
It did break the 10K, but only just. Our buyer is continuing to support 62. Just as I say that, they're testing it and splashing below. Now what's happened that's interesting to note is our buying delta that came in on the open has flipped. We're seeing more people, more the market based on the flow is positioning short. And our buyer is having to defend this. They've moved to 60 and 3/4. We're coming back up to the previous node 62. Our seller is throwing supply into this, pushing them back at 60 and 3/4. Point of control has also moved up to 61 and a quarter. Interesting to note, more supply coming into the market. Buyer stopped it at 57 and a quarter. Momentum is slightly increasing now. Our buyer is swifting price up high as all those sellers who took that bait are now being tested and squeezed a bit. Boom. We get a complete flip within the delta as all of those sellers that went short on that moved have either completely reversed their position or they've gotten out because now the momentum, the positioning has moved to the buy side. And as that is happening, our passive seller is accumulating into these buyers. At 65 is where our seller is sitting now. And we're seeing what, again, I would refer to as the creepy volume. Momentum is starting to decline, and we're seeing just price go back and forth and volume get trapped on both sides. Currently, more buying is coming in, supported by the delta on both markets. And up here, as we get higher, the only thing that I can see based on my perspective is just what I would call it's gray zone. There's no data
Mm-hmm.
levels that I can point to. Our seller is still at 65 as we're at 70. We're starting to see a lot of buyers take the bait. Our seller has now moved to 69.50 as a lot of volume was coming in as we moved higher. Offers at 70 now.
Still got this mechanical trading. The
Yeah.
volume profile at 758 that held like almost to the tick to where I saw volume coming in.
So our offer still at 70 is they're eating this liquidity. Our buyer goes for the push, throws in the orders, and our seller is eating the liquidity, defending 70. And our momentum is actually continuing this slope of decline since the volume came in on the open. it's painting the picture for this is a sophisticated day. You're going to need to really know what you're doing if you're taking
Mm-hmm.
positions, because they're playing a game from my perspective. So we just had a surge of buying come in and it was all eating pretty quickly. Our offer is still at 70. And even with that, the slope of momentum is on the decline. So that just printed. Offer is still at 70. I'd say we're going to see buying at this point of control, which is at 62, looking below. Great setup for a predator move again. We're starting to see some sellers take the bait as we're testing the 62 halves level, being pushed down to 62. Buyers trying to step in at 63.50 now. Defending 63.50 in front of our point of control. Point of control is shifting up, moving down. So it's very mechanical.
Yep.
They're playing with the levels with each of these movements because the volume is low. It's shifting the data variables back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. So point of control is at 62 halves. Our buyers defending 63.50. There was shifts back and forth, couple of ticks and points, but we're back into where our buyer is now absorbed quite a lot of selling that got trapped in that movement we saw for those past 30, 45 seconds a minute. Now we're coming back into it, throwing supply into it. And as that supply came in, there was a liquidity that fell for it, and it's being absorbed by this passive buying again, what I refer to as pretty creepy. And as I'm saying that, we've got more supply coming in now, pretty heavy. And just as I say that, our buyer steps in again and is absorbing quite a bit of negative delta as a lot of people are positioning short. Point of control is still at 62 now. Our buyer is still at 63.50 and continuing to defend it. And each time we move down, we are finding more participation go short. And once it gets really heavy, our buyers stepping in and bringing it back up to where they're defending at 63.50. We're starting to see the point of control get jerked around. It's now at 63. Our buyer's at 63. Supplies coming into the market. How's our buyer going to respond?
Interestingly, I got a point of control at 740,
All right, so that just printed with
and then it
aggressive
jumped back up.
selling. Lots of sellers took that move. We're now, what are our sellers going to do? Supplies coming in now. Well, how's our buyer going to respond? They're at 57.75. Supply is punching in now. What we're seeing with the order flow is a net short positioning. There is selling that's coming in. Our buyers responding with the show that they're putting on now, holding the 57.75 level. All right, so the supply is picking up. Interesting to notice on the institution side, they're not selling. Well, just as I said that, they flip short, but it's very passively, and they're back in the bid. Lots of selling is now being absorbed. A lot of sellers are taking the bait as we go down lower. Very heavy on the retail side. On that slope of momentum that I've been observing since the open, we're starting to find liquidity here as we push lower, and we're finding sellers, but again, volume's very creepy. Our buyer, from my perspective, all right, now we got a huge amount of selling that came in. The most we've seen so far. And how's our buyer going to respond? Their last position was 57 and 3/4, so they're being pulled. The selling is still coming, still getting heavy.
We have since the open, we've had a ton of selling in YM and RTY, as well as ES.
Both markets are net short, extremely heavy on the retail side, but there is an accumulation in this net short position on both markets. Now we're getting really heavy. So as I mentioned, it's been I don't know, 6 and 7, 8. It's been somewhere in that time ago. I mentioned how this was setting up for another predatory move. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching right now. So all those buyers that came in and followed the creepy flow, it painted a picture for our market makers and our position traders who've got the money to test liquidity. That's what they're doing now. So this is all printed. Let's see what's the response to it, because both markets just went net short. Already it's creepy because that printed and I'm not seeing, okay, and as I say that, they're throwing in supply. All right, supply's coming to the short side now. Really get nasty with it. Buyer shows up at 43 and 3/4. This is the time where I'm now looking for positions. I've seen the open. Gonna be a sophisticated day. It's not gonna be crazy volume like I was expecting, where we see nice volatility moves. This is gonna be an interesting day. Buyers at 45, and they've absorbed all that selling that took the bait after the last print. The volumes completely flipped on NQ. There was a slight surge of buying delta that we saw for a bit, and then they flipped it again. They wanted to test lower price to get some more sellers. We got some more sellers, and now we're going up as the volume is now completely shifted. There's buying coming in on the retail side. On the institution side, it's not near as enough flow, but what they're doing over there is a lot of people are trapped short still, and they're still holding their short positions.
That dip started my position at 747. I took the position long.
Definitely with the flow, so on both sides now as they're net positive, and we're seeing that was the first increase of volume that we've seen since the open. All of this selling that fell for that predatory bait trap short, you now have to react as they are moving the flow to the buy side again aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
But just looking at the momentum and how they're doing, we're still creepy. And yeah, huge amount of buying delta now coming in on the retail side. They've just completely flipped everything as they trap sellers on the lower pricing. Now we're back up to the point of control at 62, where there is participation sitting there and absorbing the higher prices as that buying volume's coming in. Mostly I would say that is shorts being squeezed.
And I'm selling out of my position as they're getting squeezed. I've already hit my first target. The second target was like a tick away before that little quick micro pullback. and I'm fully out of the position before my balance level at 780 and a quarter.
After a couple of tests of the 62 point of control, so volume's still creepy. I mean, so it's just going back and forth, price up and down. Where can we find participation to make our next move? And it's going back and forth. So we're seeing higher prices. We're testing the 62 again, but there's a seller sitting there passively absorbing this flow, this liquidity that's coming in. Now they just printed 61 now, 61 halves. They're in front of the 62 point of control. They're absorbing it. A lot of buying getting trapped up there, and each time we get a huge increase in buying that gets trapped, they just jerk price down lower to see the response. And I'm a little behind price, but I think this needs to be noted is as we went down, as those buyers got trapped on the higher price, we saw the delta and liquidity flip to go short, and then once that happened, we're now where we are now, above the 62, catching more buyers. And just as I say that, as we're above the 62 point of control, catching more buyers, our passive seller steps in and moves price down. Very creepy flow. But I think your position is spot on. I think you're in a good spot. And you played it beautifully. Position, you just followed your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how they did it, they played right into it.
Yep. And I'm glad you said that to anyone that may be watching. That is a result of following the plan, not necessarily knowing what they're going to do. All I did was follow the plan.
I mean, we're seeing buying come in, and it's heavy. Offers at 64, but again, I'm not, because it's creepy. So that node just printed. Offers at 64. Point of control is still at 62, and we've got price in between. The momentum where it stands right now is on a decline. So market still hasn't seen what it needs to see yet. So this is the market makers doing their game now. It's gonna search for liquidity at this point. It has to.
Mm-hmm.
We're just, I don't know what you call it, a wedging. We're just wedging into this where our buying and selling and point of control is with these data points and these well, it doesn't matter. All that doesn't matter. We've got an offer coming in. And that the market is positioning short. We're getting heavy. Almost all the buying that just printed is flipped. Our buyer is now trying to support this from going any lower, 60 and a quarter. As that's printed, more volume is coming into the offer. Just that last print, all that buying that came in for that last move is completely gone, and we're now net short. We're testing the buyer right now with their supportive move at 54. So are we gonna see higher prices, or what's gonna happen? We're kind of watching that now. They moved up to 55. There's a lot of selling that's being absorbed at the moment. How's our seller going to respond to this as we're seeing this buyer hold price right here? Momentum is slightly ticking higher as more supply is coming to the market and our buyers having to react. Big sell order just came in. Buyer held it back at 55, all absorbed. How's our seller going to respond? They're shooting supply. They're coming with the supply. They're getting heavy. They're testing the buyer again. We're dipping below, buyer's back in it. Right when I say buyer gets back in it, more supply comes back in it. Our buyer's back in it at 55, they're fighting. Buyer still supporting and absorbing all of this. How's our seller going to respond? We're again on the retail side, we're seeing an increase in participation. NQ has not quite caught up, but that printed. The seller came in. Buyer is now responding to that as I would interpret now. Everybody saw that. That printed. It's not going to go back. Buyer's at 51. Moved to 50 and a quarter. Huge amount of liquidity orders coming to the sell side as our buyer is eating all of it up. 49. They're shooting supply into it. The buyer's being pushed down, and then just as I say the buyer's been pushed down, boom, just like that, they throw in inventory to eat all this liquidity that's coming, and we're back at 48 and 3/4 now. Lots of selling is coming into the market, and our buyer is absorbing it. Our seller's not stopped though, and they're continuing to accumulate to the short position. And as I'm saying that, the buyer is now beginning to squeeze this short volume that's trapped. We saw a huge amount just flip and get out of that. Now we're testing our offer that just printed with high volume as they took that short position at 55. They haven't given up. So after the 55 was tested, we've got an offer come right back in. We're testing now the buyer again, who was at 48 and 3/4. They've moved to 49.
Still very mechanical, and we got those buyers were sitting right at the top of one of my power range levels, PR plus 2. Traded almost at the tick at that level.
We're just, again, the flow is to the sell side, and we're just seeing the buyer, our passive buyer and seller, just bounce back like they're playing ping pong with this flow that's coming in, making a decision as to where we go. And as prices dipping below our buyer at 49, we're catching a lot of liquidity to the short side, but it's still there, bouncing price back and forth, back at 49 for a quick moment. Our seller is not stopping the offers from coming in, the supply from coming in. Now we're starting to push as if we've seen the momentum increase on the retail side. More volume is coming in, and the positioning is again to the short side, very aggressive. That just printed. How's our buyer going to respond? I'm not going to make any claims as to what I think is going to happen, but
me either. Only levels that I'm watching is we got VWAP at 731 and a quarter, and then a balance level. That's same balance level at 728. So I'm looking at that area to see what kind of response we get, if we get down there.
Yeah, if. It's a big if, because with just this flow, like, you can't really, even though there's a seller who's definitely positioned themselves short, they're fighting what I would say is a sophisticated, intelligent buyer that's quite outright with them going short here. Flow right now is net long. On the institution side, it's so passive. We haven't even seen an increase in volume on NQ since the 45 print. So we're going on plus 10 minutes. And the previous level where our buyer was at 49, we're back there. And all of that increased participation that came in net short is now being tested. Only resistance that I show up here is again that point of control still at 62, but there's no nodes that are printed that are open that I can see where our offer is sitting. I would, from my perspective, our offer has positioned themselves right now. They're short. And our buyer is pushing through this, just through a ton of volume into this. Now our offer has to respond. Both markets are net long, triple digits. Buyers stepped right in after that move, and it looks like we're looking to test 62. That would be our next level where I would where the decision making would be happening in terms of the rotations and the next move. And with that move, this move that we're watching where our buyer just comes in and squeeze all these offers that got trapped down there, low volume, easy momentum. So our seller is completely backed off. Buyers are in the gas off of the new minute that just printed. 290 contracts traded, majority of it's to the buy side. Now we're starting to see the seller respond passively. Market is still bid. This is our buyer. Boom. They're throwing in volume. We're seeing the response as the price gets pushed all the way to 60. There's our offer. So they're at 59, and we're now watching their response. We saw a test of 62, quick rejection off of it. Our buyers they're ready to go. Buying volume is coming in super heavy.
Peeking into this price action a little bit, looking at the 1 minute, you can clearly see the range or the channel is a slightly bearish channel that we're trying to make an attempt to break out of now. Just looking at it from a structural perspective. And also something interesting I just noticed as we come into the new 30-minute period, that first 30-minute period of the open, with all that overnight volume that we saw, that only traded at 78K. So going back to your creepy price action, we're seeing there's not a lot of additional participation that came into the market in that first 30 minutes.
Exactly, because with us being extended here, it's not a game for a lot of people. This is for real,
Right.
And they've got to really protect positions and really be positioned exactly to minimize risk. This flow that we're watching, I think, is a great view, a display of how it's done on both sides. What we've missed out on is we're seeing an increase in participation come in because a lot of those shorts got pulled out, and that was the increase in volume as they're having to cover. But as there was a buildup in buying above the 62, that's when our passive sellers stepped in and they're starting to absorb all of that buying that came in. We're back into the range where the point of control is at 62. It's being defended. Our offer is sitting at 60. They're defending it. Now it's kind of what's our buyer going to do? How are they going to respond? And it looks like this is going to print here in the next 15 seconds. And we move to the next minute. We're going to get more of that buyer response. So our buyer is still here. They've now moved to 58 and a quarter. They're pushing it up. 59 halves is where our buyer is. Let's see what they're going to do. We're seeing buying volume come in on both sides of the market. Our offer's at 64, 63 and a quarter now, and they're being pushed as buying is coming in. And just as I say that, it's just the liquidity is eating up. Our sellers now at 62 and 3/4. Momentum is declining, but they're buying both sides. So it's our offer that has to respond to this. And we're watching them try to defend the 62 point of control and prices from going higher. Sellers sitting at 62 halves.
Still looking at my 1 minute, we have this flag pattern that we're making an attempt to break above the high at 767.
Yep.
The low of that
If
pattern is 756.
we break above that 767, there's going to be a heavy, just, it's on the board. There's a node and volume sitting at 770. I expect that to be defended. And based on what we're seeing, the only thing that's going to push through that is if all this volume, we just see a ton of participation come in long. So what's been happening now is all of this buying, it's being absorbed offers still. So they're still in the range, battling the 62 point of control. Our sellers moving back between 63 to 61. And ever so often, once we accumulate, and here we go, boom, there's the big burst of buying volume as I was referring to as we touch 770. And the delta is there to support it both sides, so they just came with it. Let's see if they're going to continue to come with it, and that was our momentum move, and we caught a crap ton of sellers in that creepy back and forth auction block that was created. Yes, and there is the volume. Huge amount of volume came in. The most delta we've seen all day just took place now for that move, as I would interpret as most of the participation was short here. And I think that was just a liquidity pool to hit stops because now they've backed off of it. We're still in the creepy mode as 770 is defended passively and trapped a lot of longs. Now, how will we respond? How will the market respond to what just happened? Offer at 68 halves. Unfortunately, because I am really getting into it, so it's good and bad, but I did miss the trade earlier on the 857 print on that pull for the trapped buyers. You know, I'm taking a predatory position, and I should have been a buyer a lot earlier. That's my mistake. I just vocalizing that also for me to hear when I listen back to this flow.
I've removed all of my orders due to just time restrictions.
We're seeing buying come in, but it's not. It's coming in, but we got buying coming in.
Yeah, that's the best way to really explain it.
Yeah, and now it's as we get to higher prices, we're seeing boom, the liquidity jump. Again, my interpretation is now this is our offers at 82. How are our buyers going to respond to what's happening? Is this for real going to continue higher, or are we going to still continue the creepy mode? So far, the creepy mode is at play. A lot of this buying that's coming in, they're being played with by this offer at 82. Because there is a ton of buying that just took place, and how it printed and how it actually happened, it's very creepy. That buying is now being squeezed a bit from 82 down to 70. Now we're back at 78. How are our buyers going to respond? All of this is increase in volume on both markets. So there is a battle happening here, and it's Offer still at 82. Buying is increasing. Flow is still coming to the bid. It looks like they're for real with it. We're getting an increase on both markets on accumulation. So there are buyers positioned here.
So we are seeing some resistance at that balance level of 780 and a quarter.
Yep, and our 82 is still there. And even though this buying, so here that printed now, and that 82 is there as a print. What's going to be the response to this? I'm now going to be looking for a trade for me, but I don't think it'll happen because there was a lot of buying that came in. For me to take a trade, it's just gonna, it would have to be a savage move. But I'm now looking, it'd be better if we get a continuation to the upside on this low volume, as more sellers are going to be squeezed. And based on how I interpret the flow, as you just see a massive accumulation in a delta, to me, that's what happens when stops are being triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, from my perspective, we're witnessing sellers still at 82 and 3/4. Buying just comes in, just throws inventory into the market, throws those orders in. We're testing the seller. Just looking at the tape, man, both markets are buying heavy. Seller really got nasty at 86. They moved to 85. Prices at 82. They moved to 83. We're at 81. All of that buying volume that came in on the retail side just got unwound. And as it was going to flip to a net short position, the momentum changed again. And we're now going long. How's our offer going to respond? They're still at 83. They've moved to 82 and 82 halves. Price now at 79. We're very close to seeing all of that buying that just came in on these last 2 minutes completely absorbed. Pushed up to 82 and 3/4, but still defending the node that was previously printed at 82. Oh, by the way, we just made new all-time highs in Q.
Yep.
I don't know if we made a note of that, but that's what we're watching here. The price action at all-time highs.
Mm-hmm. Up to
Offer still
787.
at. Go ahead.
No, that was it. It's up to 787. That's the new high.
Okay, so that printed. Our buyer passively is defending its position. Momentum is dying down off of that move. Offer at 85. We're now testing that buyer that just printed. They're at 82 and 3/4. They're going to have to defend where that offer previously was, as they're now kind of getting underwater, as we're seeing 79, 80, 79 and a quarter. The positioning is now going short as we're testing all that buying that came in off of the break to the highs.
Mm-hmm. And as you say that, I'm looking at the rest of the market, and they're still just selling off. So it's only, looking at this price action with NQ, it's only a matter of time before it joins the party. Is the big question is when.
Or if it flips the other markets.
It
long.
could.
And interesting enough, as you're saying that, and I'm talking and watching, and we've witnessed all of what's happening, this is a great opportunity for our game makers, our market makers to hedge positions.
Mm-hmm.
This is, from my perspective, this is a great kind of view of what hedging looks like on a big scale.
Right.
Buyers at 76.50 now starting to defend a lot of these offers that are coming in and starting to push price lower.
That's something I want to explore a little more into, like what you just mentioned about hedging. I never really thought about it that way, in terms of just the differences between the different um, contracts within the same sector.
Hmm. So 78 and three quarters has been defended by our buyers. They absorbed all of the offers that got trapped as price moved lower, and now they're just we're continuing the agenda, the program, which is the squeeze
Mm-hmm.
that was generated on the creepy flow that we saw move price back up and down on the range since the open. How will our sellers respond? We've got an offer at 87. Our buyer is sitting at 78 and three quarters. Let's see if we get down there because they're absorbing the selling and positioning into it. It was just touch, little slight jerk off of it. How is our seller going to respond to this? Are they going to throw in more supply? They're trying.
And they're continuing to introduce retail traders into the market just by painting
Yes,
painting the pictures from what everybody's familiar with, all the patterns and the structure and all of that. The way I see it is like, it's a commercial for how, like, Walmart will have a commercial of they having sales. This is their commercial, just, painting the picture with the patterns and everything to get retail traders to jump in.
exactly. And with the way technology and perception has evolved to where it is right now, what's today's date? July the 6th, 2021. They can now interpret that data
Mm-hmm.
rapidly and quickly and be
Yep.
able to respond and react and reposition for the next move. Offers at 79.50. We're still testing the buyer. Price is kind of lots of offers and supply is coming in and positioning here. So if this goes all the way back up, it's going to be again another squeeze. Huge amount. So we got an increase in participation, and it looks like it's going to print on both retail and institution side. So there is an offer who got who put in a position. That's either they're in a position or they've taken profits. Judging by the price action, it appears to me to be a position. Getting aggressive with it, our buyers having to respond. They're still defending their price 78 and three quarters. Boom, they're moved up to, and then moved right back down to 78 and three quarters. So slight little battle going on now as this seller has taken a position here at the highs. And our buyers having to respond to it. So that printed 78.50 is where our offer is sitting. We're seeing the flow come in now, bouncing off of it, trying to find where our buyer and seller is. We've got our buyer at 78 and a quarter. They're moving higher. They're up to 79. How's our offer going to respond? They're net short on both sides of the market. Retail, institution, MNQ, NQ, boom. Huge amount of offers just came in. Our buyer had to respond, absorbing most of that liquidity at 75. And I will be looking for a trade.
I'm keeping my eye on that volume at point of control at 62. That gives me a range between that and my PR plus 3 level.
A lot of offers just came into the market. And we're seeing our buyers step in and absorb it. So here is a battle. A lot of people are taking that print where we got an offer to go short, and we're seeing the response.
All right, and with that, that's gonna conclude my session for the day.
Good session.
Yep, definitely a good
I
session.
think we played it. We played it very well, given the flow, sticking to the plan, just being consistent.
Yep. All right. Hope you have a good one.
Hey, same
Yeah.
to you.
All right. Take it easy.